In this video, I want to focus on what I believe is the single most consequential and dangerous verse in the Quran. And I want to unpack what this one verse means for the West and potentially for the future of the entire world. The verse is Quran 3:28, which says, "Let not believers, that is Muslims, take disbelievers as allies rather than believers. And whoever of you does that has nothing with Allah, except when taking precaution against them in prudence. And Allah warns you of himself, and to Allah is the final destination." Now, that's a bit of a word salad. The thing about Islamic writings is they're so desperate to make it sound profound that they just make it sound convoluted and a bit nonsensical. But essentially what this verse is trying to say is that Muslims cannot be friends with non-Muslims. And if they take non-Muslims for friends, then they will cut themselves off from Allah. Here's a commentary on that verse that unpacks what it's trying to say. It says, Allah prohibited his servants from becoming supporters of the disbelievers or to take them as comrades with whom they develop friendships rather than the believers. Allah warned against such behavior when he said, "And whoever does that will never be helped by Allah in any way," meaning whoever commits this act that Allah has prohibited, then Allah will discard him. Similarly, Allah said, "O you who believe, take not my enemies as friends, showing affection towards them. And whosoever of you does that, then indeed has gone astray from the straight path." Allah said, "O you who believe, take not for friends disbelievers instead of believers. Do you wish to offer Allah a manifest proof against yourselves? And O you who believe, take not the Jews and Christians as friends. They are but friends of each other. And whoever befriends them, then surely he is one of them." So time and time again, Muslims are warned, do not be friends with Jews or with Christians or indeed any other non-Muslims. If you do, Allah will discard you. This is a salvation issue for Muslims, that they cannot be friends with Jews, Christians, or any other non-believers. Now it says you can pretend to be their friends if you feel threatened by them, but never let it be genuine. So Allah said next, "Unless you indeed fear danger from them," meaning except those believers who in some areas or times fear for their safety from the disbelievers. In this case, such Muslims are allowed to show friendship to the disbelievers outwardly, but never inwardly. For instance, Al-Bukhari recorded that Abu Darda said, "We smile in the face of some people, although our hearts curse them." So you're allowed to pretend and smile to the Jews and Christians and unbelievers outwardly, but in your hearts you have to curse the Jews and Christians and unbelievers. Al-Bukhari said that Al-Hassan said the taqiyya, that is acceptable lying or deception within Islam, that's allowed until the day of resurrection. Taqiyya is acceptable lying or deception. So if Muslims feel threatened or are in a position of weakness, for example, if they're in a minority living in the Christian West, they are allowed to lie and pretend that they're a friend of Jews and Christians and unbelievers, but never let that actually be true, is what the Quran says. Allah said, "And Allah warns you against himself," meaning he warns you against his anger and the severe torment he prepared for those who give their support to his enemies and those who have enmity with his friends. So this is the bottom line here. Muslims are not allowed to take Jews and Christians or unbelievers as friends because they are Allah's enemies. And if they befriend Allah's enemies, they cut themselves off from Allah. Allah discards them, will not help them in any way, and indeed will torment them. This is a salvation issue for Muslims, that they are not allowed to befriend Jews, Christians, and unbelievers. Instead, Muslims must lie and deceive Allah's enemies in the short term, but really their ultimate goal is to conquer and to eliminate Allah's enemies. And this is established in many verses. Fight everyone in the way of Allah and kill those who disbelieve in Allah, and fight the unbelievers until there is no more disbelief and religion should be only for Allah. And Quran 9:29, which also says, "Fight those who believe not in Allah, even if they are people of the book," that means Jews and Christians, "until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." So you see, the bottom line really is here that Islam itself teaches that Muslims must hate Jews, and Christians and all unbelievers because these are Allah's enemies, which is why you get stuff like this.
You're a liar. I wouldn't trust you and I have to hate you as well.
So the point is you won't have a conversation with me because I'm a Christian.
No, I won't believe anything you say because you're a liar. And you're a Christian as well. So I hate you for the sake of Allah.
You hate me for the sake of Allah.
I hate you for the sake of Allah.
All right.
I hate you for the sake of Allah. Every Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah. Any Jew, any Christian, I hate you all for the sake of Allah.
He hates me for the sake of Allah.
You hate these and the other.
Would you kill me if you get a chance?
If we're in war, I would chop your head off.
Yeah, Allah guides you.
If we're fighting in war, am I supposed to let him kill me? I said if we are.
No, let's ask this again. Do you hate me?
Yes, I hate you for the sake of Allah.
Who taught you to hate me?
Islam did.
From our religion that we have to hate them for the sake of Allah.
The hate for the sake of Allah is part of the religion.
Loving the Muslims and hating the non-Muslims.
Jews, Christians, as well as polytheists, they are the worst of the creation.
A non-believer, a non-Muslim. Yeah. We hate him for the sake of Allah.
Hated? Why? Because no matter what they did, they're still kuffar. They took her in. They took the Muslims in. They treated them with respect and protected them. They wouldn't surrender them. Yet she still referred to them as the people hated, meaning the people we hate. The deen in Tawheed remains a barrier no matter what good they do.
Now here's why this whole concept is so consequential. If someone hates you, the Western mindset says, well, it must be based on some kind of grievance, whether real or imagined. In other words, I must have said or done something to upset that person, or maybe there was just some kind of misunderstanding. They took something the wrong way. But either way, if we just sit down and talk about it, there's a chance for reconciliation. I can apologize to that person. I can make amends. We can straighten out any misunderstandings there may have been. We can solve this through discussion. We can build bridges and bring about peace. That is the Western mindset. However, what the Quran says is that Muslims must hate Jews and Christians and unbelievers, not for anything that we've said or done, but simply because Allah has told them that they must. And what this verse establishes then, and the verses around it, is that making peace with Muslims is in fact impossible. If they live at peace with us, if they make friends with us, the Quran teaches they're making friends with Allah's enemies, and Allah will therefore cut them off. He will discard them and will torment them at the end of time. To become friends with Jews and Christians and unbelievers is to become one of them. It's to become an enemy of Allah, which means to be at peace with us is to deny their God, which means as long as Islam exists in the world, as long as there are people in the world that call themselves Muslims, they must, because Allah has commanded it continually and forever and ever and ever until the end of time, try to conquer us and put the whole planet under Islamic rule. You can't negotiate with it. You can't be friends with it. You can't make long-lasting peace treaties with it because we have been prescribed as Allah's enemies. And the aim of Islam is to conquer Allah's enemies, Jews, Christians, and unbelievers, and put the whole earth under Sharia law. So we have to understand this, that as long as Muslims exist, they will keep trying and keep trying and keep trying forever and ever and ever and ever, and they will never stop trying to conquer us. They will never stop, which makes for a very difficult problem, as you can probably see. It's a problem that many of us in the West are not ready to hear, but essentially this verse means that we are in a zero-sum game with Islam. Either Islam wins or we win. Either Islam conquers us or we conquer Islam. Either the whole world does come under Sharia law or Islam is utterly defeated and the world is kept free. Those are the only two options in front of us. And this verse, Quran 3:28, and the verses around it, creates that ultimate reality. Now, again, I'm not sure if the Western mind is fully ready to reckon with this reality yet. Ever since 9/11, the Western mind has tried to convince itself that Islam is essentially a religion of peace. And those terrorists who do all those bad things, they're just an extremist whack job minority. They're not truly representative. Even after hundreds of Islamic terrorist attacks since, where they've shouted Allahu Akbar, we've kept telling ourselves this. Islam is a religion of peace. All of those terrorists, they're just whack job extremists. We've even tried to divide Islam into two things to get around this: Islam and Islamism. And we've told ourselves that Islam is essentially fine and peaceful, but it's just that Islamism that's the problem. This tells us that we have not yet fully reckoned with the problem that lies in front of us. The problem is Islam. Maybe we don't want to reckon with it because it's such a horrifying proposition that billions of people subscribe to this, and it is a zero-sum game. And that is the bottom line. Either Islam will conquer us or we will conquer Islam. There's no making peace with it. This verse makes sure of it. If they make peace with us, they cut themselves off from Allah. It's a zero-sum game. They conquer us or we conquer them. Now, Western naivety about this is what has allowed Islam to make gains in recent decades. The Western mind simply cannot conceive that this is really, in current year, how people actually still think. And it means that we look at how Muslims behave with a kind of veil on our eyes. We keep telling ourselves, no, the terrorists are just extremists. This isn't true Islam. We can live at peace with Islam. Islam's essentially fine. It's essentially peaceful. We can live at peace with it. If Muslims are kicking off, it must be because they have legitimate grievances, which means we can apologize and make amends and we can clear up any misunderstandings. But we're still not getting it. They hate us, not because of anything we've said or done, but simply because Allah commands it. During the Middle East conflict, when Islamic Palestinians are attacking Israel or committing acts of terror against the Jews, the Western mindset again says, well, there must be some kind of legitimate grievance behind this hatred. It must be because the Palestinians feel disenfranchised or oppressed. It must be about land. And maybe we think they must have a point to be that mad. And therefore, we should be able to fix this through political discussion. We can make peace. There can be apologies and reparations, and we can build bridges. There can be peace with Islam. But that is to fundamentally misunderstand the Islamic mindset. Quran 3:28 sets in stone that Palestinians are not allowed to live permanently at peace with Israel, because if they were to truly take Jews for friends, they would cut themselves off from Allah. They would deny their faith. They're allowed through taqiyya to pretend to be at peace with Jews and Christians momentarily in order to secure their own safety and to give themselves time to retool and re-equip. But Allah doesn't allow them to truly be at peace with Jews and Christians. As I make this video, there is a celebrated peace treaty in the Middle East, which is held for, I guess, a few weeks now. But I can guarantee that won't last forever. Muslims must, for no other reason than because Allah compels them, seek to wipe out every Jew off the face of the earth, and then Christians after that, and then all unbelievers. The Hadith says that the last day won't come until you fight with the Jews, and the stone behind which a Jew will be hiding will say, "O Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, so come and kill him." Muslims believe that the last day can't come until they wipe out every Jew off the face of the earth, and then Christians and unbelievers as well. Palestinians will continually and forever seek to destroy Jews because Allah says they must, and then Christians, and then all unbelievers. This mindset is so alien to us that many in the West can't comprehend it. They can't believe that in current year, this is how anyone really thinks, and we keep convincing ourselves or trying to tell ourselves they can't really think that way. But they do. Jews are in a zero-sum game with Islam. Either Islam conquers them or they conquer Islam. And we in the Western world, although many people don't recognize it yet, are in the same boat. We as Christians are in the same boat. Look at the previously Christian nations in the Middle East and in North Africa, and look what happened to those nations when Muslims took over. When Muslims took over those previously Christian nations, the Christians were wiped out, eliminated. We see them trying this in Nigeria right now as well. So it's a zero-sum game. It can't be negotiated with. Either they conquer us or we conquer them. See how sobering this reality really is. And it's brought about by this verse. Now, are there any ways around this? Honestly, I don't think there are. The only way around it that I could see is if a Muslim prophet came along who somehow superseded the authority of Muhammad and who had the authority to change the Quran and delete Quran 3:28 and all those other verses. But since Muhammad already set himself up as the final prophet and the last word of Allah, after whom there would be no other, That's realistically not going to happen. And therefore, we will remain on Allah's enemy list. And so the zero-sum game will remain in place, which means, again, either Islam conquers us or Islam is conquered. So finally, how do we make sure that we are the conquerors? How do we make sure that we win this ideological battle? Because it's imperative that we do. Well, firstly, we have to face up to this reality. We have to lift the veil from our eyes and see Islam for what it really is. We have to put away this naive talk that even some Christians engage in, where they say that God and Allah are the same and Muhammad was essentially a good man. He wasn't. God and Allah are not the same. Islam is a hostile force. Secondly, we need to be actively working at winning the ideological battle. We need to be consciously engaged in this. And this is part of the plan that we're currently working on right now in the Fuel Project, the plan to retake Western civilization based on the example of William Wilberforce and the Clapham Saints. And over the past few videos, we've been explaining some strategies at how we can target and dismantle Islam. We've seen how we can do a lot of damage to Islam, for example, by exposing Muhammad. Most Muslims don't realize who Muhammad really was. They've been insulated from the truth about Muhammad. But around 50% of Muslims start losing their faith when they find out who Muhammad really was. So we can help to conquer Islam by exposing Muhammad. And to that end, share this video as much as you can. We've also seen how many Muslims are being held in Islam by this idea of heritage. They don't want to betray their heritage. That's a really powerful force that keeps people within Islam. But we can overcome this by showing how their true heritage is actually in Christianity. The Middle East and North Africa were flourishing Christian lands for 600 years before Islam came along to enslave their ancestors. So keep putting this information out there to win converts. And to that end, share this video as much as you can. Be confident, be encouraged in this. Islam talks a big game, but in many ways, it's already weakening and losing the battle. There are lots of encouraging reports that Iranians, for example, are leaving Islam in their hundreds of thousands. Tens of thousands of mosques are closing. Many Islamic teachers are talking about how they see hundreds of thousands of young people turning their backs on Islam around the world every year, because its true nature is being exposed on the internet like never before. They can't insulate them from the truth anymore. And there's a panic about what to do about this. Well, let us keep feeding into this panic and win this ideological battle. Scholars have been studying and found that in 11 Arab countries, Islamic adherence was weakening among key demographics, namely men and the young. And that bodes well for the future because women will then inevitably follow further down the line. So let's focus on amplifying these messages that expose Islam and that dismantle it and weaken it and bring it down closer to home, as well as witnessing to Muslims by exposing them to Muhammad and encouraging them to see their Christian heritage. Let's work on banning halal meat in the West and banning the burqa and banning Sharia law. We need to get Christians into halls of government, as I've said, and into places of influence within organizations and institutions so that they can then make changes. We need to work on getting mosques closed. We need mass deportations. We need to push for this. We need to raise general awareness of the hostility of Islam, to expose the fact that it is an invading force with hostile intent. And all we really have to do there is to amplify their own words because they're not hiding it. It's in the Quran. It's in the Hadith. Islamic politicians are actively making this known that they plan to take over Britain and the West, United States, Canada, and turn it under Sharia law. So waken people up to this. And we need to work for laws that make sure Muslims are disqualified from holding positions of power in the West. That means no Muslim mayors, Muslim councillors, presidents, or prime ministers. And most of all, I truly believe this, and I'll talk more about this in forthcoming videos. The real key to saving the West is re-establishing Jesus in the public sphere. That is the absolute key to all of this. If we do these things now, we can win. And we will win. I have no doubt about it. Remember, in the West, Islam is still a small minority and we still have the numbers on our side. But we have to move now and each play our part. And if we don't, and if we keep playing at comfortable Christianity and not really doing anything, The reality of this verse is going to come to our door eventually. If Muslims keep being emboldened, eventually they will turn to violence and there will be conflict on Western soil. We don't want that. We want to beat it peacefully. Another thing that might feed into this actually is that I saw Donald Trump telling Nigeria, I think it was last week, that if they keep allowing Muslims to kill Christians, he would intervene. If the US specifically goes into Nigeria to target Muslims to save Christians, then that could spark a Christian-Muslim conflict across the West. We saw what happened in the Middle East, where that kind of spread across the West. I think the same thing would happen if Donald Trump and the US went into Nigeria. That would then be another issue. If that happens, I'll talk about that when it does. But our job as Christian civilians now is to win this battle ideologically and peacefully. So get involved, play your part. Here's the plan. So get involved in this, and we'll keep developing this in future videos. And make sure to subscribe to stay updated as we go along with this.